Hello, I am your host, Elaine Miller-Karras. Welcome to Resiliency Within. I want to let our listeners know we're also on Facebook Live at Resiliency Within. And if you'd like to send me an email, elaine@resiliencywithin.com. So our show today is about building resiliency in rural America. Building accessible interventions promoting mind and body health in rural America is possible. Research suggests that individuals living in rural areas are less likely than residents of urban areas to seek professional help for psychological distress for several reasons, including stigma, both public and self-directed, and also what we call mental health literacy, like what's going to happen if I go to see a therapist and how are they going to help me? Lori Strand and Melissa Boley, both psychotherapists working in rural Idaho, will share their insights and how they've managed to their individual I added this spunk and commitment to build community coalitions to create accessible and affordable programs promoting well-being that can lead to greater mental health. By the way, they both grew up in Idaho. They're not transplants. So I think that's a very important aspect as they start sharing with us their perspectives, because this is something that they've lived through even within their childhoods, what it was like to grow up in rural America. And I think they have unique insights because of that experience. But I think they'll talk about the strengths of their community and how they've integrated the community resiliency model into the school system and other community organizations. And I want to tell you a little bit more about each one of them. So I've known Melissa for a number of years. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor in private practice in Ketchum, Idaho. She specializes in trauma and holds advanced postgraduate certifications from the Trauma Resource Institute, the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute, and the EMDR Trauma Institute. She's taught trauma both nationally and internationally in Nepal, the Philippines, and in Serbia. And the work she participated in with the Trauma Resource Institute, I had forgotten about this, Melissa, in the Philippines was actually on PBS, on Life on the Line, hosted by Lisa Ling. We were both on that show, which was pretty exciting. And we were there helping Filipinos after Typhoon Yolanda. And we certainly, they also helped us, didn't they? Because we learned so much from them when we were there. But also Lori Strand, she's a licensed clinical social worker and is the mental health coordinator and therapist for the Blaine County School District, a small district in the mountains of South Central Idaho. She recently started her own business called Resiliency Rising, which utilizes the research-informed community resiliency model, offering individuals and organizations tools to heal and thrive and become trauma and resiliency informed. She's pretty passionate about bringing CRIM skills to everyone, because she told me a long time ago that she was going to be one of the leaders bringing resiliency-focused interventions to the entire state of Idaho. So we're going to ask her a little bit more about that. But boy, is she busy. She serves on the board of the Hunger Coalition as the chair of advocacy committee and volunteering her time regarding the 5B Suicide Prevention Alliance. You might want to tell us a little bit about that. But I know that you've also been involved in coalitions, you both have, in bringing resiliency to Idaho. So I'm going to start out. So first of all, welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine.
I'm so glad you're with me today. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start out by asking you both, knowing and seeing your commitment to healing, what called you to do this work you're both so committed to in the world? And I'm going to start with you, Melissa.
Yeah, that's a great question. What called me was I had the privilege of going away to an all-girls boarding school, which I loved, in Colorado, and it was called the Colorado Springs School. It still is. And they raised us with Outward Bound principles, and Outward Bound is a wilderness program. It was 23 days. And basically they taught us the importance of groups, and that we couldn't move any faster than the slowest person in the group, that we had to stabilize that person and get them on board with our main goal. And our goals usually were climbing mountains or river rafting or skiing together or climbing rocks. And so I learned the importance of groups being together, working well in balance. And I also, by mastering the skills they taught us with the outdoors, learned to believe in myself. So it was believing in myself and believing in the group cohesiveness that got me going.
Well, thank you, Melissa. And how about you, Lori? What can you share with us about was there anything in particular that makes you so passionate about the work you do in the world?
Yeah. It's funny, Melissa and I have super similar backgrounds as far as my journey with working in the mental health field started in wilderness therapy in the desert of Idaho. And I ran an experiential therapeutic program on a farm in Montana for about 8 years with youth through an organization called Garden City Harvest. And so just being in our bodies and working that way and being a part of something important together was a huge jumping off point. But I think more than anything, my passion always has been believing that we as individuals do have a lot of capacity. And once we harness that then we're so much more powerful kind of as a community. And that just leads into pretty much every day what I am most passionate about, which is giving individuals the tools to then be stronger as a community.
I think what I've learned from both of you too is, and having been to Idaho a number of times, is just there's something so beautiful and organic about the place that you live. And I've seen where you both have kind of had this lens of how can we also bring an organic vista of how we can promote healing within individuals and communities. And so that kind of gets me to my next question. And this is also a personal question. So when each of you have had struggles in your life, what or who has helped you journey through those struggles? So Melissa, I'm going to come to you first again.
Yeah, first and foremost, it's been movement in nature, using our resources of Idaho, being out in the mountains, just moving in nature. And then also my husband, Tom, and also my colleagues here. And I would say, and my work have really helped ground me whenever there's challenging times.
Okay, and how about for you, Lori? What would you like to share about that?
Yeah, it's so funny. I always, when I was a kid, if you would ask me where I would live when I got older, I was like, thought I would move to Los Angeles. I loved LA, just was like, I'm getting out of here. And for some reason, every place I moved was smaller. So I moved to Alaska for a while, and Utah and Montana. And I do believe, I didn't know it at the time, but those wild places and have always helped me continue the everlasting human healing journey. It doesn't just end one day. I
love that, those wild places.
Yeah. So that, and of course my family, I have such strong family ties, and they have, been there every step of the way. And yeah, I'd say those two are probably the strongest.
Okay. So let me kind of move into some other questions right now, because Melissa and I have known each other for a long time, longer than I've known you, Lori. And I met you actually through Melissa's work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Melissa, you've been trained in a lot of different therapies, and I know that you're quite committed to body-centered therapies. But so why was it that you first brought the trauma resiliency model and then the community resiliency model into Idaho? What was it about these two models that inspired you?
Well, I began with let's say body mind therapies in 2000, and I had a hard time. I believed in them and it worked super well in my practice, but I had a hard time explaining exactly what we do. And so I met this woman named Elaine with the Trauma Resource Institute, and she brought me on. And when I went and witnessed what you were doing with the Community Resiliency Model, it made so much sense to me. The skills were so usable that I was like, oh my God, this is the ribbon I needed on the package to explain how trauma holds in the body and how we can bring about balance in our nervous system. And the skills were so usable. And when I saw it work with people on that playground, Elaine, we went out to a playground where people were getting supplies, and we had our participants practice the skills with people that needed the help. I just was like, wow, you could use this with everything, every single family, every single agency, school systems, our systems in government. The skills were just so usable and they worked. And so, you gave me the language and you gave me the model to bring it forward. And I was very passionate. I also was trained in family systems with the Milan theory. So I understood how systems work. And I saw the power of that.
Yeah. And so I think the other thing, if I could just add this too, one of the things you talked to me about was that it was expensive to bring therapies into Idaho because there's not that many people. And I think what we've tried to do with the community resiliency model is making it more accessible so that it wasn't so expensive. Because if it's expensive, it would make it more, more of a reach for rural America. And I think, would you say that's true, Melissa, or not?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think the other thing I saw in the Philippines was empowering their own people to empower their own. Okay, so empowering people to empower their own was really a big game changer for me, because many places we do not have mental health therapists. We do not have the ability to spread the word. And so I kept thinking about Katrina, and I kept thinking, what if every single person that went into that Superdome had, along with a blanket and a cot, had a little mini intro of the community resiliency model as they walked into the dome, so that they'd be able to know when somebody got popped up too high or too low, out of the balance of their nervous system, and they'd be watching out for each other. And what if they knew the skills to bring them back into balance? Would we have had to go through a death in the Superdome? And I was like, wow, that would be a game changer.
And I think that, that exact philosophy is like, if we can get it into the water, that as many people know how to regulate their nervous system, and it's in their own hands. And I think that brings me to you, Lori, because I've been inspired by what you've been doing with CRIM and the trauma resiliency model in the Blaine County School District. So can you tell us a little bit about it? What inspired you to do this? How's it going? Let us know a little bit, because in the beginning, it was just kind of like a couple of you, but now it's kind of expanded. So let us know about your work with Blaine County School District.
Yeah, well, when I came into the school district, I was kind of charged to do some work with streamlining so that every student, no matter what school they went to, would have access to the same mental health supports. And so then I spent a lot of time researching different ones, getting trained in different modalities, and was set to go, I think, to New York with two of my other colleagues to get trained in a different modality, which I won't speak about because they all have their strengths, but and I don't even remember how it came about, but somehow got in touch with Melissa and asked her to come in and do just a day-long workshop. I think it was a day-long or a half day. And by the end of that workshop, that evening, I remember calling my boss and canceling and saying, you have to come with me to California. We need to go get trained in this model, and I need you to see what you think. And I think that that journey then has led to now it's, the base of our crisis first when we have crises in the schools, it's our go-to model for the way that we support the entire district, whether it's a death of a student or a death of a parent or a teacher. It's the underlying model for all of our counselors, social workers, psychologists, and we have, I think, 5 teachers within the district now. And teachers, we do teacher workshops, both in person and in Zoom. So it's just built more capacity. And I really, I think what's been the best part of it, besides, when someone has taken these trainings, whether it's a counselor or a teacher, pretty much immediately they'll come back and say, I've never had anything work so quickly and be so helpful. Right. And I think that was when, I've often told this story that I was becoming I didn't know that I could stay in mental health forever. I kind of thought like, I'll give this a few more years, but I actually think I'm going to need to pivot to something. And that was because my nervous system was just getting bumped out all the time by sadness and crisis, and so was everybody else's. And so it's pretty amazing to watch when you get some tools. They're easy, they're simple, but it doesn't mean it's always easy, that people do the work and then become stronger again as a community. So that's
the question that I was going to ask you, but maybe you answered it, but I think I want to say it out loud so what was it about when Melissa came that you said, first of all, I'd have to think twice about canceling a trip to New York because I love New York.
Oh, that was the only reason I didn't want to cancel it. Trust me, it was painful.
I had
a lot of
I know, it was very sad.
Yes. Yeah. But for you to cancel the trip to New York, what was it about what Melissa shared that got to you that said, this is it? What was it? I'm just curious about what the it was.
I think it's two things, but it's the same thing. One of them is we spend so much time telling people and ourselves, like, just pause before you make a decision, right? Well, if you have never read your nervous system or have no idea when you need to pause, your capacity for doing it that's a shame-based statement because you have no idea what it means to pause. And I think for the first time, I had gained understanding of what it meant to really know what was going on inside my body and notice how I could pause. It was like, and it's the only way that I can explain it. And I've watched that with everyone else too. It was like, oh, I can use my brain in this really brilliant way, sense my body and shift kind of those storms. It doesn't mean the storms go away. It just means that I can have a different relationship with them. And then I can respond in a way that works for me and those around me, I guess would be the best way.
Well, that's a pretty powerful statement and to think that you just had either a half day or a whole day training. And that's what you got from that, which I guess brings me to another question from Melissa. How has your work in your community changed since you did bring the models into the community? I certainly see how it changed Lori's work, but how has it changed your work?
I would say, I think that the ability to have people track is huge. It teaches them to pause and to read their nervous system when it is in balance and when it's out of balance. And we tend to notice more so when it's out of balance. We can say, oh yeah, I know when I'm getting anxious because I shut down with my breathing and my heart starts pounding. But the resiliency piece is really noticing when you're in balance, and we don't notice it as human beings as much. And that is a really key thing. And I guess it's changed my work in that I can explain how the nervous system works to people in a very simple way. And we all have nervous systems, and animals all have nervous systems, and people that do not speak the same language all have the same nervous system. Yeah. And so it's so great because everybody can relate to it. And they go, oh yeah, it's universal in the education. Everybody gets it. And so if I can teach people to track, then that's the biggest piece of then teaching people to get into balance.
And so I just want to remind our listeners that tracking means learning to read your autonomic nervous system. So when you have a charge in your body, when you have a release, when you have that deeper breath where you feel more relaxation, that when you're able to navigate that system for yourself, that I think what we're hearing from both of our wonderful speakers today, that it's a game changer.
Melissa, that was really beautifully put. Yeah.
And Laurie, you're a yoga instructor, and Laurie, I remember in yoga, and I'm really not great at yoga, but what do? You lean into where it feels a little stressful and then you back off. That's tracking in itself, right? And so, the skills are just universal. That's all I can say. They just work.
Well, and I think what's a little bit different about the way that we put together the community resiliency model is we really want people to start leaning into their well-being, their sensations connected to their well-being. Not to say the stress is not there, but that is also, I think, a game changer for many people, which brings me to another question for Lori. So Lori, can you tell me about a student or a client that changed the way that, you practice? Is there one that comes to mind? You go, wow, that was amazing, bringing this work into my practice in this way.
Yeah, because we do live in such a small town, I kind of, I'm thinking of a group of individuals a little bit, which are my amazing, 15 to 17-year-old boys. So in wilderness therapy, I was always an instructor to boys groups. They always stuck me with the boys and never with the girls. And in my work, of course I saw both males and females for sure, but I just have such a passion for young boys. I think they struggle so much with figuring out what their voices with their feelings and what's going on with them. So I just think of, with one student, which was just struggling with panic attacks, just constantly, man, we did some help now skills, which again, I'm in a school system. I'm not like in an hour session where we're processing anything like that. I am like, how can I give you the tools so that you can be in class and go to school and not stay home? And so we ended up doing some lamination of help now that he could do whenever he needed to. And so his big one was drinking water and putting his hands underneath his legs, sitting on his hands on his legs, right? And so we would practice these when he wasn't, bumped out of his zone. And one day I just remember one of them coming into my room and saying, I just can't believe this works. I just can't believe this works. And there's a handful of those things where some students would use they would talk about questionable resources, whether it's smoking pot or drinking alcohol, right? And we would kind of play around with that, and they would notice that they would be as calm in the office just talking about that without having that substance there. And then we could kind of build from there and notice that they just wanted the tools on how to feel calm and connected and a part of that they could actually get, and they never had experienced that before. And to see their faces just kind of be like, this is so are you a witch doctor? And to be like, you're doing it on your own. I'm not doing anything, those, just seeing those boys be able to kind of have
and
that.
So, and I think this is, because I've heard this before, people say, gosh, what did you just do to me? It's not really what you do to someone, is you help them to understand this nervous system.
Yeah.
And I want to just say a little bit about Help Now. Help Now, there's about 10 Help Now strategies we've come up with. We could probably think about 50 if we wanted to, or 100, but they basically have to do with occupying the mind and the body in a different way. So it could be drinking a glass of water and noticing as you're drinking the water. It could be pushing against a wall. It could be naming colors in the room and noticing the shift on the inside. So they're very simple and are so easily integratable into school systems that we have heard from all over the world that many of the teachers and the people that are in counseling roles feel that, oh, thank goodness for Help Now strategies. So and so the fact that, did he have panic attacks in the same way after that, or was he able to manage them better?
No, totally able to help manage them better. And he used to get them when he would go on overnight trips. And so we made, this was a Spanish speaking family too. So we made laminated cards in Spanish and gave them to his caretakers so that when they would go on road trips or something, they would have these little cards that then they could support him with. It was pretty incredible to just see how he could track using these skills that didn't have to do with breath. For this student, that was not helpful, and to bring kind of his nervous system back into balance, and then just really notice that, right?
Well, and so one of the things that you said that I think is really important is this, can we talk about in terms of scalability, is when you teach something to someone, who else can you teach it to? So you talked about his caretakers, or it could be their parents, or it could be other people that have interchanges with that child. But when you teach other people, then everyone is talking the same language and also can use the same kinds of helps. So not only to help the child, but to help themselves, because I think it's important for our listeners to know that these also help adults, right, to get back into their zone, because so many times children are having difficulty because the parents are having difficulty.
Yes.
So I think that's a very important part of what you're doing too, when you illustrate those points. But I also want to say one thing about, I think this has so much implications, and I think we need to do more research about this, is that if what a child is trying to do is to be calmer and not to feel like I'm depressed and sad all the time, or I'm just so jacked up, but they can do something that is organic and natural, and that they don't have to use a substance. Imagine that may change the use of substances in adolescence if we gave children other tools to use. And that's why I'm so thrilled that you are bringing them in into the Blaine County School District, because children are getting these skills early. And how is it changing their life? I know Melissa has something she wants to say about that. Melissa, what would you like to say?
Well, part of how do we know that it's making a change in this community? It's hard to say because, we don't interface with, I interface with people in my private practice. That's how I get input, or people will refer someone to me to learn the skills, that kind of thing. That's how I know we're creating a change. But there were a couple markers. One is many kids are coming into my practice, and if I start with, oh, these are these skills that might really help, they'll be like, I already know these skills. We learned them in school. Okay, so that is really great. Mm-hmm. So Laurie has planted that seed all through the school system, which I couldn't do because I wasn't part of the school.
I see. So I'm just seeing that there's not only the system of working individually, but also working in community. So when we come back from our break, I would love for you both to talk a little bit more about that, because we really want to help people understand what you've been doing individually and communally. Because we want to try to improve the mental health in rural America. That's one of the things that's, bottom line. And I think there is, when you just said that too, I think, oh my goodness, the challenge is if you live in rural America, you may not see these folks all the time. And there's little pockets like in schools that you may see them.
Yeah, they're bigger systems.
Different in terms of how do you see that something is working or changing. And so I want to say to all of our listeners that Melissa Boley and Lori Strand will continue to share with us after the break about specifics really of how do we improve the mental health in rural America, and also how do we remove some of those barriers and constraints to bringing innovative ways to cultivate well-being that really is about cultivating not only our mental health, but our mind-body health. And I know that both of you believe in that so seamlessly and passionately. So we will be back in a few moments with more from Melissa and Lori.
All right, great job. We're all clear. Back in a couple minutes.
Okay, thank you. All right, and our Facebook listeners, we are here on this little break. I know you can hear us now too. I'm going to just see, sometimes there's comments that people are making in Facebook, sometimes not. So I'll just check to see if there's anything coming up for anybody right now. But anything you two want to say at the break? I don't know if you need a bio break right now. That may be something, if you need to, you probably should take.
I'm good. Thank you.
I'm good.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to see if there's any comments on Facebook. And if there's anybody listening on Facebook or watching, please feel free to go ahead and let us know. I don't see anything right now. Let's see. All right. I can scroll down maybe. Let's see. All right. Nope, not right now. I'm not seeing anything. All right. Okay. All right, I'm just going to get out of that window. Okay. All right, ladies, we'll be just here for about a minute or so, and then we'll come back on again. But thank you so much for what you're contributing so far to help us understand. And, Lori, I never had heard that story about
really?
About the New York story. I'm going, holy camoles. I have so much respect for you. I had respect for you before, Lori, but I'm going, boy, that girl has honor. I would have probably just gone and said, oh, maybe we should do the training too. But I'm going to go have a trip to New York.
No, I knew it would work better. It just is it's so much easier. It's just, you can integrate it. Have you heard my new explanation is now that it's the cake pan? You never pay attention to the cake pan, but if you didn't have the cake pan, you couldn't do anything else. So you have to have the cake pan, and then you have the cake, right?
Oh, I love that.
That's a good one.
Well, all these like great metaphors that you all create, I just think are so exciting, right?
Yes.
Well,
we're also cowgirls in Idaho. So the deal is that when we see something and it resonates, we go for it.
Yeah. right?
Well, I mean, it definitely is. When I come to Idaho, I definitely know that I'm not from Idaho, that I live in a rural area. Because you guys all have a different way. You like a shorthand about talking about the mountains and the weather and things like that that are a little different than living in a suburb of Los Angeles. So, yes.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to be coming back now.
Okay.
America, health and wellness.
This is Resiliency Within with Elaine Miller-Karras. To reach the show during our live broadcast, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to elaine@resiliencywithin.com. Now, back to this week's show.
Welcome back. This is Elaine Miller-Karras with Resiliency Within, and I'm with my two wonderful guests, Melissa Boley and Lori Strand, talking to us about mental health strategies in rural America. Specifically, their part of rural America is Idaho. So the question that I have for both of you, if you could do anything to improve mental health in rural America, what would you do? So I guess this time I'm going to start with Lori and then I'll go with Melissa. So Lori, you go first and then Melissa.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Well, I think one of the first things that I wish that if I had like a magical wand and could do anything, one of the biggest things I'd really love to do is reduce stigma just all around. I always equate it to like a broken wrist. We don't ever tell people they need to take their cast off and that they're like faking it, right? But we do this with mental health all the time. And people are so fearful of reaching out for services, especially in rural America, because your therapist is also goes to the same church as you, walks down the street, you see him at the grocery store, et cetera. So it is just more inherently challenging. That's one of my biggest, I think the ways that I approach people in counseling is through that of it's okay to be not okay. We're all in this together. Humans are messy and we're just figuring it out together. So that's one of the things I think I would love more of the ability to do by increasing just simple awareness. So the reason that I love this model and the reason that I think it is really useful for rural America and why I want to get it implemented in businesses and organizations in our healthcare system and with our first responders is because I can talk about it in that it's biology based, right? And based on neuroscience, right? So this is not a thing that I've decided is a neat idea. Either did you, Elaine, right? You're not like, oh, this seems like a neat thing to do. It's based on biology. And like Melissa was saying, just that we are all walking around with nervous systems that are constantly reacting to things. And mine is going to be different than yours. And so just being able to present that information that way in the rural communities, I think can be really helpful instead of saying, yes, these are wellness skills, but I speak about it differently. I'm not going to go to some first responders and say, let's talk about self-care, because I'm not sure that that's the approach that feels best. But when I can say stress has impact on our nervous systems and our long-term health, that is much more easier to understand with different populations. So I think mine is that we meet people where they're at. We talk in a way that supports what they're looking for. And so that, I guess that's my biggest hope for mental health in rural America, and also seeing it as not separate, right? We talk about mental health, but can we just say health? Can we just talk about it in terms of health?
Or mind, body health, yes. And how about for you, Melissa?
I would echo on what Lori said. And really, when I first came to Idaho and started these models, I was really thinking about the stigma with mental health and basically the biology piece, and that the model reduced the stigma because of the science and biology. And so that's number one, get Idaho on board with neuropsych with biology. And that's number one for me. And then number two is get communities involved so we can all support one another. I'm already working with Laurie we're talking about the last incident that just happened in Idaho with our mall, and how we can get people in place to help people that have gone through that incident. So it's training a lot of people in this state, and it's also getting the capacity. That's the other piece, is getting the capacity. So we have trainers in different regions of Idaho, so we can call up our buddies and say, hey, heard you had a big fire up north. Do you need maybe some help or support with some CRIM trainings? And, you know, so that we can have a network of people that we can call on. And I know you had that in San Bernardino, Elaine. You had already trained a lot of people there. And so you had a network to call on. And that's what we're trying to do in Idaho, because initially it was me. Then I got another person. Then I got another person. I think we now have 20 people in Idaho trained in the model in various forms, whether it's trim or
Yeah, I
crim.
think there might even be a few more than that.
Yeah.
And I also want to just say that also is your husband. He's now
Yeah,
also
Tom's
a teacher too. So
yeah,
you really brought it into your family. I'm waiting to see your boys next, Melissa. But you know, there's I want to ask you both about, because you know, I was on the break, we were talking, you both said, actually Melissa said, you know, we're cowgirls in Idaho. I'm definitely not a cowgirl, although I do know cowgirls in California too. There are people that are definitely cowgirls in parts of rural California. But I also noticed that, you know, when I go to Idaho, or even seeing sometimes you on Facebook, Melissa, you're climbing a mountain, you're doing something that a lot of people would not do. Especially when they're older. They might do it when they're younger, but not when they're older. But there's a certain endurance factor, I guess is what I'm saying, a certain strength of physicality that I've known, even if you've had, you know, Melissa, even when you had your back problems, right? Melissa's going to get better so she can do the stuff that she loves. So I'm wondering about how that plays out when you're a tough girl or a tough guy, and saying, oh, I'm suffering from sadness or depression, or I'm so jacked up all the time, I just want to blow my top. Does that play in, that factor? I'm curious for both of you. That wasn't one of our planned questions, but it came up. I told you one of these questions might come up. So I don't know which one of you wants to tackle that.
I think it's going back to the nervous system and biology, and that we are really most efficient when we are in balance with being the tough guy or the tough girl. Okay. And so, and also the term resiliency, being flexible and adaptable to life stressors. So as I get older, I'm adapting to the types of climbing I do. I don't climb at the levels I used to climb at 20. Okay. So I think it's learning, like, when are you most in your resiliency, and what changes that? When can you, you know, in Idaho, we all are connected to nature. That's one thing that's really key here. I think most Idahoans would say that our wilderness feeds us. Either it's through hunting or fishing or horseback riding or mountaineering or climbing or river rafting. And we have that asset here as a huge resource. And I think people learn, like, wow, if I really blow my top, I may not be that efficient going through the rapid because I didn't look at it first. Okay. And I need to slow it down a little bit and think about it and put that thinking cap on. And so it's like, how does it work for you when you're handling these life stressors, or when you're in the environment and you're in unison with it? What happens? How do you get back in the flow of it? And so I don't know, you know, sadness, if you just frame it as part of the nervous system releasing, and that it's okay. And that's what the natural beauty is. When a horse basically lets out a sigh, it goes, right? And all of a sudden its nervous system readjusts. It's biological. And these things are nothing to be ashamed of. Happens.
So I can see, you know, when I'm just hearing what you're saying too, is that if you even connect it to, if you love horses and noticing the biological process of horses, that if you own a horse, you've noticed that before. And then what happens to us if we're getting, you know, jacked up, or if we're kind of disconnected. So, I mean,
can I tell you one more thing about horses? Of
course, yes.
Okay. I learned this. I went and did an actual psychology seminar with horses for 5 days in Montana. And I had no idea, but we are herd animals just like horses. And horses basically, when they are in balance, they all beat the same heartbeat and it's at the same rhythm. And when something comes into the horses that creates some kind of stress, such as a coyote or a cougar or something on the outside of the herd, what happens is they have sentinels, they have guards on the outside that are set up with the horse organization, and they start beating faster, which then gives a message to the herd to go, to flee. Okay, so it's like sonar. So if the whole group is in unison with the heartbeat and being in balance, the more productive it's going to be in order to access whatever, grazing, eating, that kind of thing. But if there is something coming in that we need to pay attention to, our bodies will take over and then it'll move us to safety. But it's all done through the heartbeat.
Well,
I was
just think
amazed
the
with that.
implications of tracking and reading your nervous system for an individual, and from what you just explained, how also we know through mirror neurons that what we see, we tend to experience, that also very much directs us in human behavior and can affect our families and our communities. So I want to give Lori, anything more you want to say about that question, or anything else that's coming up as we've had this little discussion?
Yeah, I think the only thing that's really come up that I've been thinking about, and I don't even know that I'll answer a question more than pose one, but is just this idea of, I think in our rural communities, there is, in America in general, we have a strong identification with individualism. And I would say we just have a stronger one in rural America, where there is just this rugged individualism that we don't want to get rid of. It's not a negative thing. It's actually feels powerful and good, and almost like it is resilient, right? So it's also kind of what else is true, bringing that question in, which is now my most favorite question on the planet, is what else is true, right? Can I be this really tough, rugged individual woman, right? And also depend on other people, right? Do they have to be mutually exclusive? And I think that's a lot more of the conversation also, that I feel like when I'm working with groups, maybe that don't have the mental health inclination, right? Is that it's not either or, it's and.
Well, so, and I'm wondering the question, why are you so passionate about getting information to those that may not seek it out? Is that the answer, or is there more to that? Because that sounds like that would be very powerful.
Yeah, Elaine, I love that question, because it pretty much just sums up my, I guess, the charge that I feel I'm on right now, which is because it is a model that's based, again, on neuroscience and biology. And it is so incredibly healing for everyone when you're around someone who is in their zone, who knows how to track, who is regulated. And just like you said, what you see, you experience. This can be just so available. I just think of businesses, right? We have a huge shift in the workforce right now, right? People are dissatisfied. We're having really difficult conversations in all levels of our political systems. And I'm seeing that a lot of these conversations don't seem to be happening a lot with people that maybe are in a place where they're their best self. And I wonder what the conversation would look like in all of these different areas in our workplaces, if we were feeling like we were in our zones, if we could track a little bit, if we could support each other through the way we speak to one another, through just the conversational way that we can bring resiliency to our conversation. So yes, this is my number one passion right now.
Yeah.
And Melissa, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Well, I'm just saying that in crisis, people ask me, how have you survived as a trauma specialist for 32 years? And there's something magical, it's kind of weird to say, but with crises, because there's no individuality in crises.
Mm-hmm.
When crises happen, such as a huge snowstorm up here, we're in a ski town, big snowstorms used to happen. If you slide off the road, everyone stops and helps you get dug out. Okay, they all stop to dig the car out. It doesn't matter what politics they're in, what's happening in the world, nothing like that. It's just responding to what's happening in front of them to help one another. And this is the beauty of community. And that's the beauty here, is
And so
that we all help each other out with fires. You know, people are needing to put their horses somewhere, and they all network with each other. Like, do you have a pen? Do you have a pen? Blah, blah, blah. Right. And so it's a yin and yang thing. I mean, I don't love crises, but at the same point, it does bring people together in a different way.
Yeah. And when you're talking about this, I'm also thinking, oh, well, you're talking about, Lori talked about individualism that is so part of being a person from Idaho. And yet you're talking about how community comes together within the framework of individualism, and how important both are to a rural community. And so then when we come back to the mental health issue, and I liked what you said, which just the health issue, the mind-body issue, if we could remove all the barriers and constraints, what project would you do? And that was a question that you posed to me, Lori. So what project would you do? I want to know about this project.
Oh man, I think I love creative questions. I don't know that I have even fully flushed it out, to be quite honest, but I do believe that when people start speaking the language of the community resiliency model, there's an ease to those relationships that I don't have in my other relationships. Now, I know this sounds interesting, and so people, you'll have to reach out because it happens, but there's an ease to the way that you can flow through, because the other person is right there with you and wanting to support you and your nervous system. Sounds so funny, I know, but it's just true. So I guess, again, if all the barriers were taken out, again, I would see people want to be employed in businesses, right? They want to have a job where they feel like their employees care about more than the bottom line, but they care about them as humans within families and within communities, and our frontline workers. When I see an accident and I see a firefighter responding, it's like painful. I do want to like jump out of my car and be like, okay, can you feel your feet on the ground? Just remember. And what do you notice? I want to be there supporting that person. So I guess it's more how, and it doesn't feel like I want to save the world. Like I'm trying to do it in a way that it really is for the world as a whole. Like I feel like we can all operate calmer, more successfully, easier when we are in a place of balance with one another too, where we feel safe in connection with one another, where we feel valued by all of those places that we are, and we know that we're all kind of working towards this common cause. And oh my gosh, does it sound really Pollyanna?
No. Well, you're talking to me, remember?
I know. We understand.
Right. Because
we get it, Lori.
15 years ago that, that we would be in so many countries and I would have a radio show, I'd say, really? I don't know about that. But I think if we can think it can be possible. Yeah. And I know part of that is that you want to bring this to all of Idaho. And I know that both of you are working to do that. And not only the individual, but also in the community ways. So Melissa, do you have anything you want to add to, removal of barriers and constraints? And if there were none of those there, what would you want to do in Idaho?
I would continue on with what we're doing. And that would be continuing to train everyone about the nervous system and about balance and about how to support one another, and working with various groups. We have all the nonprofits trained in this entire valley. We have, we're getting in with the hospitals. We have done EMS trainings, emergency medical services, and ski patrol is one of my objectives right now.
Love it, yes.
Because if you think about it, first responders, if they're there on the scene and they watch their buddy starting to go into a freeze state, and this is the thing in a small town, we know most of the people that get hurt. It's a ripple effect in this valley. And so if you're working on your neighbor and you start getting freezy or whatever, something happens, and your buddy that works with you notices that and can bring the skills up and help you, it can be incredibly powerful. We can't do this work alone. And there's a lot in the world that is happening right now where I feel like I'm on a mission. I know Lori does. And we've got to help with that. And I'm wondering if I could read a poem, Elaine. I just really want to read this poem.
Well, go ahead. You can read a poem.
Okay.
Yes, we have a few
Yeah.
minutes left, so go ahead, read your poem.
All right. So a dear friend of mine was killed on Mount Rainier with my professor. And it was my whole outdoor ed class. And it was in an avalanche. And later in her pack, and her name was Janie Diepenbrock, they found a poem in Janie's pack. And the poem says, "Nature is indiscriminate. It is awesome and powerful, yet serene and stimulating. How can a mountain be conquered? It is not fighting, it just is. My ultimate goal," Janie wrote, "to become part of nature, to gain its non-prejudice outlook." It's what we're talking about. It just blows my mind and what's happening now. "To come to terms with death, because all fear stems from the instinct of self-preservation." And then at the end she wrote, "If we lose that fear, we gain ultimate freedom."
Wow.
And so part of the resiliency is to help balance that fear. And then ultimate freedom is found.
Well, and also when she says that it is, because when we talk about our nervous system, it's not a right or wrong, it just is. And wherever it is, there are things that we can do to help us, each one of us. We can help ourselves, we can help our family, our friends, our community, kids at school, those ski patrol folks, in terms of learning how to read their nervous system, because once you get back into what we call the okay zone or resilient zone, that zone of well-being, we're kind of showing up as our better selves. And then we're not as likely to go off on people. We can even talk about the things that sometimes divide us. That question that you said, Lori, about what else is true, that we say, well, that divides us, but we also believe that as a community that we've endured a lot and will get through a lot. I mean, I certainly have seen that expressed in both of you. We have just a couple minutes left. I'm just wondering, Melissa, you've shared that beautiful poem. Lori, do you have anything you want to say as your parting words today?
Not really. I feel like I've said quite a bit. I think one thing that this model brings about in this super polarized world right now is that we're just all in the same boat. We're waking up each day just trying to navigate it. I love this model for the reason that it is not polarizing. It's coming down to just the base of a human and everyday experiences, and that it is about perception. Our nervous system is about perception, the way that our bodies perceive things, and just loving that there is something that I can come together with people, and that the way that we present information is to support all walks of life and give everyone the tools. And that is, I need that hope right now, and it makes me feel really good about, it doesn't matter what room I go into. I don't need to agree with people on things. I just want, I think everybody just wants everyone to be okay at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you both for leaving me and our viewers, I think, with hope. Both of you are so exemplary of sharing your world with us and what you're doing in your part of beautiful Idaho. And I just think what you're doing, I'm hoping that you will continue, and that what I'm going to come back to what Lori, you said about remember what else is true today in your own lives, listeners, that there may be turmoil, there may be divisiveness, there may be, I don't know if I should do this or that, but remember what else is true in your life. Remember those people by your side, with the sadness of the death of your friend, Melissa, to think that she left that beautiful poem for you to be able to share with us today, just about life. Because it really is a testimony to life, isn't it? It's the what else is true. And I'm glad that we could memorialize her today in our discussion, because
Thank
boy,
you.
she was one rural lady if she was climbing Mount Rainier.
Yeah.
So again, Melissa Boley and Lori Strand, you are in my heart. Thank you so much for coming on board.
Yay.
Yes, my heart goes out to both of you, and I hope one day to see you in person at some
Oh,
point.
me
Yeah.
too.
I hope to come to Idaho and stay
Again.
at Melissa's again.
Yeah, there you
Yes.
go.
Yeah, so there you go. So,
Yes.
so listeners, this is Elaine Miller-Karras signing off for Resiliency Within. We will see you next time. We have two lovely women from two Native American tribes that will talk about how they're building resiliency among our Indigenous people as we really commemorate and celebrate National Native American Heritage Month. So until we meet again,
All right.
remember what else is
Bye.
true. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Elaine.
Bye, Elaine.
Bye.
All right.
All right, great job today. All clear.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you for your
You're
help.
welcome. You're
Now
welcome.
we're still on Facebook, ladies. So
Okay.
is there anything more you want to say to our Facebook listeners before we say goodbye? We have time now.
Okay.
No, right.
We got
We'll
more
just keep-
time. Keep talking, Nick.
Yeah,
Keep
exactly. The only thing I would like to say is, Melissa and I work in conjunction with the Trauma Resource Institute. And so you can contact the Trauma Resource Institute. You can contact Melissa or myself. I just want to put my website out there to gain more information, which is www.resiliency-rising.com. Melissa,
And
I don't know.
I'm old school. You can contact me through melissaboley@gmail.com or my office number. You can also call my office if you're needing services in the Idaho area, and that's 208-726-7584.
All right. I'm sorry we didn't get to say that resiliency.rising.com and your email on the show, but they have it
That's okay.
now.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll get John to do a little bit on this when he sends out your production document to advertise the show. So thank you,
All right, you
Facebook
guys.
listeners, for being with us, and thank you. Oh, Melissa and Lori, you were fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.
My goodness, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being on the show. So until
Thanks
we meet
for
again.
having us.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. See.